All right. Before I officially begin, this is my pre-pre. This is off the cuff. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all. Thank you for being here. People who know me well know I'm pretty irreverent. I'm not officially religious, but I am spiritual. And I'm to tell you that I can't imagine more spirit than what the PMC embodies. But that's not just one person's vision. It's everybody. This doesn't happen on its own. Thank you for making it of the magnitude and impact it has. Thank you all. All right. So, welcome and welcome back to the 45th PMC. You are one in a billion. But that is so yesterday. We hit the $1 billion number on July 12th, and we are on to the second $1 billion, which we ought to achieve by 2037 or sooner. The number that matters right now is a record $75 million goal to be raised in our year-round cycling program, of which the PMC weekend is 90% of the total. As I'm fond of saying, there's a lot riding on us. So today begins an annual reunion with memories and experiences that bring the average alumni back 10 years or more. And after 45 years, word continues to spread. We've registered 6,800 riders, 400 more than last year, riding this weekend. And there are 3,500 volunteers to support those riders. Again, 400 more than a year ago. A record 90% of heavy hitters have returned, and that's a very good sign for fundraising. If any of you aspire to receive this $1 in a billion heavy hitter backpack from New Balance, it's free if your fundraising meets or exceeds $10,000. You get the message. As this graphic demonstrates, PMCers are all overachievers. Once again, the PMC raised more money than the next 4 bike-a-thons combined, and when compared to the entire nonprofit a-thon industry made up of thousands of rides, runs, and walks, and millions of participants, the PMC is number 3. And folks, that's a gross number. If you took out and made the net, the expenses, we're number 1 with a bullet. In 2024 marks the 18th consecutive year we will pass through 100% of all rider-raised dollars to Dana-Farber. And one of the reasons we can do that is due to our sponsors. They not only help underwrite the PMC, but they also ride, volunteer, and fundraise. Special acknowledgement to our co-presenting sponsors, the Red Sox Foundation and M&T Bank. Give them a hand. Now, for a shout out for a few special people and categories. This year, there are 160 Dana-Farber doctors and staff riding and volunteering. We have 133 teenagers riders, and our youngest rider is 13-year-old, first-year living proof rider, William Carusis. And we have 2 oldest riders, 87-year-old, 37-year living proof rider from Team 9, Bob First. Our oldest two-day rider is also 87 years old, Ike Van Otterloo, riding his 24th PMC Wellesley to P-Town. Now, folks, neither Bob nor Ike are here tonight, but tell me that isn't the recipe for aging well. They have lived a well-lived life on a bike. Our cancer survivor community continues to grow. There are 1,168 living proof riders and volunteers, and we will celebrate you all weekend at various locations. But for those of you who are here now, and if you are able, will you please stand up and take a bow? I'll be back in a few minutes, but will you now welcome up to the stage Jarrett Collins.
Billy. Thank you, Billy. So as you mentioned, our 100% pass-through only happens because of the generous support of our loyal PMC sponsors. We're truly grateful to our hub site sponsors, Takeda, New Balance, and MFS. And along with the PMC's co-presenting sponsors, these companies provide the highest level of support, and they're really essential to our year-round operations. Speaking of MFS, they're celebrating 100 years in business this year by recruiting 100 riders. And collectively, Team MFS has raised almost $14 million since 1999. We're also welcoming some terrific new sponsors this year, and we want to thank them for being part of this mission. So I want to thank Cape Cod Jewelry, I want to thank Verizon, Insight, Living Proof, Blueprint Medicines, and a double-fisted thank you to Sam Adams, Official Beer, and NA Beer, sponsor of the PMC. And notable among returning sponsors, two have stepped up to even higher levels of support this year. That's Adage Capital Management and Peak Event Services. Would you please join me in saluting all of the 200-plus sponsors that allow us to pass through 100% of everything you raise to treat and cure patients at Dana-Farber. So as you can see, the partnership with our sponsors is key to the PMC's success. But there's another relationship that gets us closer by the mile every year at the PMC. The partnership between you, our riders, and the volunteers who support you on PMC weekend. Now in 2023 alone, volunteers contributed to the PMC 37,500 hours. Now, in case 37,500 hours is too abstract to comprehend, that's the equivalent of working 18 years at a full-time job or playing 200,000 games of Wordle, depending on how you spend your time. So every PMC weekend, you're used to seeing hundreds of cheerful, helpful volunteers at the starts, the water stops, the finishes. But behind the scenes, there's an extensive infrastructure dedicated to keep you rolling smoothly and safely on PMC weekend. At its heart is our command center, represented here. It's based at Mass Maritime Academy, and it's staffed with highly experienced volunteers. Many of them are public safety experts. All weekend long, they're responding to calls on the PMC hotline, you know it, 1-800-WE-CYCLE, or messages from the Track Central app. And they're handling all the requests that you'd expect from cycling roughly 1 million miles over PMC weekend. So they're extraordinary. When you need support on the road, these volunteers will dispatch one of 30 PMC road vehicles. Each one is staffed with mechanical and medical support. And then every incident is closely monitored at the command center until it's resolved. RFID chips on your PMC bike tag, if attached properly, I think we have a graphic of that in a moment, will track you as you ride along the PMC route. And that helps us, by the way, notify public safety officials, police, first responders, as you're rolling through their towns so that they can have their resources in the right place at the right time. And lastly, volunteers at the command center can even notify you proactively, send out a text-based emergency alert if they should need to, either to all or a subset of the riders. So it's a little bit of the behind the scenes, if you will, for today. One more thing. The PMC has recruited 150 volunteer massage therapists who will be, right? They'll be at MMA tomorrow afternoon, helping two-day riders recover and get ready for Sunday. So for these, and for all our 3,500 PMC volunteers, how about a round of applause? At this time, it's my pleasure to bring up a 39-year rider and, after Billy, the PMC's first full-time employee. Please help me welcome Chris McKeown.
Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Before I get started, I just have to point out that between 3 pictures of me up here and all-around great guy, I'm going to take a beating from my teammates this weekend. All good, though. It's such an honor, an immense honor, and truly a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. When I was asked to tell a little bit of my own story and introduce Dana-Farber's speaker this evening, my response was that I'd happily be upstaged by her brilliance. My own PMC journey began in May of 1986. I was in the Navy, and my submarine had just returned from a 6-month deployment. A woman that I knew was doing this 200-mile bike ride, and it turns out so were 3 of my brothers. Now, 1986 was the only year that the PMC was in June, so I had just a few weeks to train, and I didn't even own a bike at the time. But I was 25, perhaps a bit smitten, and I wasn't going to let my brothers have all the glory. So I filled out my paper enrollment form and mailed it to the PMC. Can you imagine that? Now, if I'm being honest, in 1986, I'd never even heard of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. I mean, everybody knew of the Jimmy Fund, but the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute? Well, they do say sometimes ignorance is bliss, and my first PMC was just an incredible experience. I struggled then, as I do now, to explain it in words. But you all know what I mean when I say the PMC just gets in you, right? It just gets in you. But even back then, there was something about the collective spirit of all these riders, donors, volunteers, sponsors, onlookers. The phrase that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts perfectly captures the feeling. But all this humanity achieving something that was far beyond the sum of the individual's efforts. That weekend, my first weekend, I met Billy, and I recall his passion was palpable. Little did I know then, little did any of us know then, but 39 years hence, beyond our own billion-dollar milestone, the PMC essentially launched the fundraising industry that Billy showed slides of before. Well, I kept in touch with Billy over the next couple of years, and when I got out of the Navy in late 1988, he asked if I'd join the PMC head staff, the volunteer head staff, to start the Day Trippers. It was the first alternative PMC route, 86 miles from Sturbridge to Middleborough. Later, in the fall of 1989, Billy asked if I'd join the PMC as his first employee. It didn't take much consideration at all. I recall my very first day on the job. From my bedroom desk, I scrolled a paper printout of the PMC database, and I found John Paradise, IBM. I called John, and with the bond of the PMC, we talked like we were old friends for a couple minutes, and then I said, John, I need a computer. I've just started with the PMC. He asked me how soon I could come to his office. Within the hour, I was leaving his office with a new computer to use for my job. That's how the PMC worked back then. To some extent, it still does now, just the asks are much bigger. Much bigger. I have 39 years of stories and memories. Hilarious, poignant, sad, uplifting, but you all have your own stories too. And my role here really is to make an introduction. So let's fast forward to 2017, when my great friend Todd Balfe, one of the strongest, if not the strongest cyclist I've ever known, was struck with chordoma. You may not have heard of that one, but it's like it sounds. It's a cancer of the spinal cord. It's rare, incurable. It tends to relapse angrily, and there wasn't much research back then at this time. But it's all the bad stuff about cancer. Todd's treatment had impaired his once strong, durable legs. But we were determined to ride a tandem in 2018 and raise money for chordoma research. My dear friend and team captain, Link Cornell, was on board with our mission. But I couldn't find anybody at the Dana-Farber that was doing anything with chordoma. Todd had identified a small foundation in Durham, North Carolina, called the Chordoma Foundation, and we called them, and they pointed us right to the Kadoch lab at Dana-Farber. On that call, not realizing just how small this foundation actually was, I said, hey, would you guys consider matching our team's fundraising? We were having this really exciting blue sky kind of conversation, and they said, yeah, we think we can do that. I think at the time they didn't know how they were going to do that, but they did that. So the next step, I Googled Cigall Kadoch. That search revealed a young, committed, accomplished scientist on a mission. You could tell by the volume and the timing of the articles, papers, peer reviews, not a word of which I really understood, that she was really shaking things up. So late on a Friday afternoon, I dialed Kadoch Lab. I was expecting a lab assistant or voicemail, so I didn't really think about what I was going to say. But the phone rang and I heard, hello, this is Cigall. And I literally thought to myself, oh crap, what do I do now? But a wonderful conversation ensued. And the following Friday, Todd, Link, and I went and met with Cigall at her lab. We were astounded by the research the Kadoch lab was pursuing on tiny submolecular components of DNA, all foundational to a vast array of cancers. I called Link later that day and I said, I think we just met a future Nobel laureate. And he said, I was thinking the same thing. So because I can't do her work any justice, and because you really want to hear from her, I'll let Cigall take it from here. Please join me with a rousing PMC welcome for my friend, Dr. Cigall Kadoch. You're the best. Go get him.
Thank you, Chris. So today is Friday, and Fridays hold a particularly special significance for me and for my connection to the PMC. Chris's call to me was on a Friday afternoon, and the visit he describes was precisely the next Friday afternoon. In walk these three men, Chris, Link, and Todd, all ready to sit down in my, at the time, little office, having just started building our young lab and research efforts a year prior. I fit them in around a cramped small table and thought I'd tell them a bit about what we do. Just minutes before, I had just taken off my gloves and lab coat, walking in from the bench where my team had made a pivotal discovery, a discovery we didn't yet fully appreciate would be so important in our understanding of cancer, and actually one that we didn't even know we'd ever have the opportunity to pursue further. Why? Because the kind of scientific work fueling the discovery would have never been a candidate for traditional academic research funding. Too big, too high risk, and too bold. For me, taking the road less traveled by was a theme for my young existence. A PhD scientist who had intended to become a medical doctor, dedicated to studying cancer, but chose to learn intricate biochemistry instead, and the Dana-Farber had even taken a chance on me and hired me from California, despite lacking the standard, much longer path of training and having arguably way too few years to my age. All of this was unconventional. but stem from my quest to understand and treat cancer, motivated by my own personal losses of those close to me, including my beloved nanny as an almost teenage girl. In addition to the unconventional features of my career path, at the time these PMC riders walked into our lab, the unconventional road less traveled by was the central hallmark of the actual science we were doing as well. So sitting in my office, I wanted to describe the moment they had just walked in on. So I thought I'd capture their attention with a simple, easy to understand picture of what we do. Let's bring up the slide. Yep, there it is. And I somehow got back perplexed, blank stares for a second, but with perhaps a slight undertone of intrigue and confidence in their eyes that the drawing I showed and the discoveries implicit within could mean something for cancer and their deeply personal connections to it. And indeed it did, and it does, because our laboratory at the Dana-Farber studies large macromolecular machines that roll along our 2 meters of DNA inside each cell of the body, sitting down on different places along the DNA to dictate which genes are turned off and which genes are turned on. It's very much like playing chords on a piano. Different collections of notes produce different output sounds. And so gene expression is really the melody of life, going on in every one of your trillions of cells in the human body every single second. And that melody needs to be played perfectly. For any defect in how this is played, any misplayed note can set an entire piece off course. That, in essence, is human cancer. Misplayed notes. We've learned that exactly this process is what underlies over 50% of human cancers. And in our laboratory, our work has enabled us to mechanistically understand and now therapeutically target the very factors that control this. The factors that lie at the heart of the off-key melody of cancer. I looked up at Chris, Link, and Todd, hoping for their understanding, hearing this from an early-stage scientist, and luckily for me, and for the future of our work, I didn't lose them. Because our work over the past almost 8 years now, otherwise wouldn't have been possible without them. And I stand here now, 327 Fridays later, and the basic science work that I'm pleased to say has actually given rise to an entirely new class of cancer therapeutics that have just crossed over into clinical trials for human cancer patients. Right now, being evaluated for safety and efficacy, the tip of the iceberg, and still a ways to go, but a monumental first step toward a new strategy to fight cancer. Once poorly understood, very complicated-looking molecular machines, puzzling to visiting PMC riders, and even most scientists alike, are now top actionable targets in oncology on the front stage. We are very hopeful that these concepts and therapeutics yield an entirely new wave of targeted approaches for a very large collection of human cancers. Big, grand ideas, sometimes like ours, that stem from a totally new angle, even pure naivete and curiosity at times, are most often not those awarded by conventional funding mechanisms. But it's these ideas and approaches that are most likely to provide the exponential leaps into the future for cancer care. And the timing is now. We are operating in an unprecedented era of technology and hence speed with which we can discover, innovate, and build new strategies for cancer at a pace unfathomable just a decade prior. With this, heightened support for creative, bold approaches are needed now more than ever. So as you ride the roads tomorrow, know that you are enabling us researchers to confidently choose the roads less traveled by. Your tireless efforts will propel us to do the hard, the bold, the high risk, rather than the incremental, to climb the steep hill toward the finish line rather than to take the longer and easier route around. This is our chance to create for a world where cancer is no longer a formidable foe, but a conquered adversary. Thank you, PMC, for your unwavering commitment, your sweat and tears, your boundless generosity. Keep believing in the power of bold ideas, keep riding, and keep cycling in tandem with us toward cures. Thank you very much.
Good job, honey. Thank you, Cigall, and thank you, Chris. I don't tend to use opening ceremony remarks to memorialize friends we have lost in the PMC family. We all carry torches for people who are special to us, loved ones who have died of cancer or are currently battling the disease. This weekend blends those memories and aspirations with a 3-day celebration of life. But PMC is also about impact. And I would be remiss if I did not take a few minutes to mention Larry Lucchino's PMC and Dana-Farber legacy. Aside from his contribution to Major League Baseball and ballparks around the country, most notably our beloved Fenway Park. Starting in 2007, Larry co-chaired Dana-Farber's $1 billion capital campaign dubbed Mission Possible, along with Dana-Farber's current chair and 31-year rider, Josh Beckenstein. Larry chaired the Jimmy Fund from 2016 until his passing in April. He opened Fenway Park to patients, their families, staff, and thousands of other deserving people during his tenure. Larry loved overachievers, particularly all of you who would make possible Dana-Farber's mission to treat and eradicate all cancers. And so he did his part. Over the past 22 years in his privileged role as CEO of the Boston Red Sox, in 2004, he brought the nearly unattainable World Series trophy to the PMC check presentation party a mere 2 weeks after they had broken that 86-year curse. It was one of the greatest parties we ever had. In 2014, the Red Sox organization hosted the PMC $500 million check presentation event, which was at that point only the second private event ever hosted on the hallowed field of Fenway. With Larry's approval, the PMC is highlighted with our logo on the green monster, TV interviews, our folks singing the national anthem, the living proof bike parade around the warning track, and allowing Fenway Park to be the home for both the PMC Winter Cycle and Pedal Partner Party. Larry, as a Dana-Farber patient himself, was all in with the PMC. This past April, we released the PMC origin story. If you have not watched it, I encourage you to do so. We interviewed Larry in December. It was the last interview he ever gave. I'm going to paraphrase one of his statements that ended up on the editing floor. And I quote, "I once said I would get out of my sickbed to praise the PMC, and now I guess I have." End quote. Those of us who were there in the room that day will never forget how courageous Larry was conducting that interview in failing health. In 2002, when I pitched the new Sox owners for sponsorship, my challenge to John, Tom, and Larry could be summarized by this statement: I'm doing $15 million without you. Imagine what I could do with you. Larry could imagine, and I'm pleased to restate that, as is our nature, we will validate that confidence and raise $75 million this year. Larry always recognized the PMC's potential. And in honor of that outstanding contribution, this year's ride jersey includes Larry's initial in the design. He never rode a bike, but Larry's impact took us all closer by the mile. Thank you, Larry. As further proof as to how this relationship accelerated our mission, we have now crossed that billion-dollar threshold. We will celebrate that and what we expect to be a record donation on November 16th at MGM Fenway at a blowout party. Invitations will roll out to all of you in September. You're not going to want to miss it. And now, due to popular demand, I am happy to bring back the traditional PMC rider roll call. Here we go. Riders have traveled from 10 countries outside of the U.S., including one rider each from Bermuda, Canada, Colombia, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Singapore, and Spain. 3 riders, 3 from Italy, and 5 from the United Kingdom. Riders are from 45 states and territories, including 1 rider each from Alaska, Nebraska, and Puerto Rico. 2 from Alabama, Hawaii, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and West Virginia. 3 from Delaware, Idaho, Ohio, and Oklahoma. 4 from Wyoming. 5 from Indiana, Missouri, and Montana. 6 from Arizona. 7 from Louisiana and Minnesota and South Carolina. 8 from Oregon and Utah. 9 from Nevada. 10 from Michigan and Washington. 11 from Tennessee. 13 from North Carolina. Can't hear you. No, I meant the North Carolinas. I mean, you got to take it a step at a time. 17 from Georgia. There you go. 18 from Washington, D.C. 20 from Illinois. 25 from Maryland. 31 from Virginia. 41 from Texas. 42 from Colorado. 55 from Vermont. 62 each from New Jersey and Pennsylvania. 64 from Maine. 83 from Florida. 112 from California. 164 from Rhode Island. 225 from New Hampshire. 282 from Connecticut. Edged out 354 from New York. And 4,840 from the home. I wanted to get in a Celtic plug, the home of the NBA World Champion, Boston Celtics, the great state of Massachusetts. That hurts. Okay. Looking back from a 45-year perspective, I still marvel at how the PMC has evolved from 36 cycling companions to a local phenomenon, to a major event that is embedded at the core of the American cycling community. And it occupies a special place there, the go-to ride for those who would want to pair their passion for cycling with a grander pursuit. Got a bike? Got cancer in your life? Got to get to Massachusetts and ride the PMC. I mean, that's all of you, right? But the success of the PMC, why it resonates with so many and its impact is so great, rests on more than a previously spoken inspired idea. I've spoken before about how the PMC was rooted in my brain while hiking the Appalachian Trail in 1976. So while reading recently the hiking book called On Trails by Robert Moore, I was struck by this passage that I want to share with all of you. Quote, "Any forest walker can tell you this. Some trails simply work better. Wise trails get better with time. So what are the qualities that wise trails hold in common? What unites the wisest trail is a balance of three values: durability, efficiency, and flexibility. If a trail has only one of these qualities, it will not persist for long. A trail that is too durable will be too fixed and will fail when conditions change. A trail that is too flexible will be too flimsy and will erode. And a trail that is too efficient will be too parsimonious and so will lack resilience. A wise trail is in a constant state of world testing, adapting to the world even as conditions change." End quote. The PMC has been tested over decades, and it is, without question, one of those wise trails. Its durability stems from a weekend that is uniquely forged by a mission that is truly urgent. Our efficiency stems from a business model that has been in place from the PMC's humble beginnings. A lean professional staff managing an army of resolute volunteers backed by corporate underwriters. And our flexibility is demonstrated by a broad menu of routes and fundraising options that is embodied in a few PMC familiar mantras. Pick a route and a fundraising minimum that works in your life, and commit. You'll figure it out. And you always have. The PMC is a wise trail indeed. All of you, $1 billion, and the extraordinary advancements in money that's funded at Dana-Farber are testament to that. I am so grateful to everyone who has helped us reach this extraordinary milestone. But the trail does not end here. We have our eyes on the future and that next billion. And tonight, with my eyes on all of you, I expect that second billion will only take a third as long to achieve. Thank you all. Ride safe, have fun, and find inspiration in that greater good that you will deliver. Thank you. Thank you. Now I want to bring up to the stage 14-year rider and WBZ anchor riding out of Sturbridge this year, our own Lisa Hayes, who's going to get you ready for the next part of the presentation.
Okay. We are dear friends, so I can say this. You have now called me Lisa Hayes, and you have called me Linda.
Did I say Hayes?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Well,
and I was going to say,
try it out.
Before you get off the stage, it isn't one man's vision that makes this possible, but without one man's vision, we wouldn't be here. And so before you step off stage, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Billy Starr, for building something that has changed all of our lives and enables us to celebrate $1 billion in fundraising for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. That's how I get you back. Are we ready to ride? If that doesn't make you just want to go to the parking lot and take off right now, I don't know what does. But we get to eat and sleep and hydrate a little more. There is no partnership at WBZ that means more to me than the partnership with the PMC. For all the stories that we tell all year that are about divisiveness and rancor, this is about coming together with one goal, because we can make a difference. And because the collective power of our fundraising is moving the needle and changing lives and enabling us to celebrate with the people that we love. So I hope that you will enjoy our special, which we are about to air on these big screens, PMC Everyday Heroes. All of you are everyday heroes, and it is an honor to ride with you. Enjoy.